I came to the Mandel world through Seymour Fox. When the School for Education Leadership was founded in 1991, I was already a graduate, and I was already at the Hebrew University. I felt at that time that it was my responsibility, having gotten so much from the program, that I felt it was my duty and my moral obligation to come back and serve in the program as a faculty member. During the course of the 90s, early 90s, I taught on and off on the program. And in 1998, Seymour approached me and he said, these were his words, we'd like to bring you closer to our work, he said. And I responded, and I became a regular member of the faculty since then. What's unique about the Mandel programs and Mandel leadership programs? Well, actually, I think one of the most important things about it is pluralism. The idea that you don't stay locked in your own intellectual or ideological box. You open yourself to other people who have different views of the world, different views about Judaism, different views about the state of the Jewish people, different views on education, different philosophies of Judaism. That's very fructifying. I find that's very important. You find that your way is one possible way, rather than the only possible way. And that's very educating for a person. That was very important to me. And I think that's a good diet for any leader. Assertiveness, self-confidence on the one hand, humility on the other. To be aware that your idea is a great idea, but it's only one idea among many. Another thing I think is very important is the interaction between theory and practice. There's not going to be practice that's not informed by the best theories we have, and there are not going to be theories that are not thought of in terms of the way they can be applied to practice. Those are the rules of the game in the Mandel organization, as it were. And I think that's a very challenging thing, both intellectually and from all respects. In other words, thinking about how a good theory can be implemented, or thinking about how a certain method of practice is grounded in theory, is for me a really interesting intellectual challenge. The Mandel Fellows I meet here are very extraordinary individuals as I see them. Every one of them highly intelligent, a great deal of educational experience, high level of commitment to positive change in education, social activists, educational activists, very, very concerned, very, very bright people. I've met in my other life as an academician at the Hebrew University brilliant students. I've also met very talented, instinctive or intuitive educators. Here's where I meet people who combine both the academic brilliance that you find in the university and the practical abilities that you find in the best schools and in the best leadership positions out in the field. They combine both. I think one of the things that the Mandel programs have created is a network of Jewish educators from all over the world who speak a common language, a language which they employed while they were on the program, and who are in constant contact with one another, and are constantly re-energizing each other, and fructifying each other, and exchanging ideas with each other. I know very often Jewish educators of stature feel very much alone, and feel like they haven't got anybody to talk to. It very often happens when people finish premier programs, and they're sent back to the field, and their heads are full of all these incredible ideas, and they speak a language on a much higher, the language of Jewish education on a much higher level than they did before, that they often find they have nobody to talk to within the framework of their own institutions. No one who will listen to them in the language that they know how to speak, that they've learned on the program. This is why the network of Jerusalem Fellows all over the world and graduates all over the world is so important, because people continue to communicate with each other, whether it's by email or telephone. There have been local colloquiums and there have been international colloquiums. These have been very, very important for energizing the group. I'm talking about February 2007, when we had the 25th anniversary colloquium of the graduates of the Jerusalem Fellows program at the Dead Sea. There were graduates of the program from many, many countries, all the way from Australia to Argentina to the United States, Canada, all over the world. People who had been in the program over the course of 25 years. From what I understand, there have been 170 graduates or more during that time. And I'm sure there were at least 120 or 130 of those graduates were there at the Dead Sea from all over the world for this colloquium. And I remember feeling part of a huge network of people who are making an impact on Jewish education all over the world, talented, intelligent. I attended many of the sessions and saw the projects that the people were engaged in all over the world. And I was very, very impressed with that. I think one of the principles that the Mandel Programs is committed to is that Jewish continuity means strong Jewish identity. And that strong Jewish identity means Jewish literacy and education. You can't be a well-identified Jew in modern times without being a literate Jew. Conviction involves knowledge of why it's important to be a Jew. What's important about Judaism? In what way does Judaism make a difference? In what way is Judaism different and special? On the other hand, in what way should Jews maintain connections with all peoples while retaining their uniqueness? All of these questions are dealt with within the framework of Jewish literature, Jewish texts, Jewish practices. So that today's identified Jew, today's Jew who's going to continue to be a Jew, can no longer be merely a visceral Jew. He's going to have to be a literate Jew and a Jew by conviction. And this comes only through Jewish education. And since the Mandel Programs support leadership in Jewish education and give thereby strength to Jewish educational institutions all over the world, then the Mandel Programs are making an incredible contribution to Jewish continuity this way. One thing I would hope would take place in the following years within the framework of the Mandel world would be an ever-growing contact between the programs which have been set up for those who will take part in Israeli institutions and the programs that have been set up for Jews who are going to go out to the diaspora. I would hope that conditions could be created whereby people from both programs would have more ongoing contact in an intelligent way. I think it's important to recognize that people from the diaspora and people from Israel have very different kinds of life experiences, but we are all Jews. We are all part of one people. And then the question becomes, how can we pool these very, very different life experiences of being an Israeli in a sovereign state on the one hand, and being a Jew in a voluntaristic Jewish community on the other hand, which are really very different. And it's not an easy task to bring people of these very differing backgrounds together. It's very much like in a microcosm that the task that we have in, bringing Israelis and people from abroad together in dialogue. It's not easy for them to dialogue because they have very different kinds of experiences as Jews and what it means to be a Jew. But I would hope that in the future that one of the things that would be on our agenda would be a very intelligent, measured, considered way of bringing people from these very different backgrounds together to talk about common problems.